Mets fans, we got a jam-packed discussion this evening. How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here. It is December 18th, 2025, at the time this video dropping, and we have so much to get into the latest news and rumblings in Metsland. Headlined by the fact that another day has passed where the New York Mets cannot stop themselves from stealing, prying away top talents from the Yankees organization. If we look back over the past calendar year plus, it started with guys like Luis Severino, to Clay Holmes, to Juan Soto, to now most recently Luke Weaver and Devin Williams for the back end of the bullpen. But now the Mets have pried away consensus number 2 overall prospect in Major League Baseball as we enter the international signing period in January of 2026. Wandy Asigen, shortstop, who I know you guys are going to say the last thing the Mets need is another shortstop. That's not how these IFA signing periods work. We're going to break down how Wandy decommitted from the New York Yankees as a shock to the entire Yankee fan base and to everyone that they have in company in-house and their front office. And ultimately, why did he land with the New York Mets on a lesser contract? So dollars was not the differentiator here. He simply said, no thank you, Bronx. I want to land in Flushing, Queens with the Mets. We'll break down Wandy, what you guys need to know about him, more details as to why he left the Yankees organization and joined the Mets. And from there, we'll get into not only how deep the Mets farm continues to look as one of the best in baseball, is getting so much better after this IFA signing period beginning in mid-January, technically, of 2026 in pitching market. We know the Mets have an appetite for some ace caliber starters, but we also know that they would like to add a guy that could really be in the heart, middle of the pack of their rotation. Who falls in that category that's available in the free agent class, if at all? And ultimately, we'll break down a little bit on these guys who makes more sense than others. From there, we'll also get into the top Japanese players that are set to sign sooner than later as their signing windows come to a close, and Tatsuya Imai, Munetaka Murakami, and Kazuma Okamoto. So guys, sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride. A lot of breakdown in a short period of time to do so, so hit that like and subscribe button on your way in. Let me know your initial thoughts, reactions, and analysis of the following topics in the comments down below. And as always, shout out to our great friends at SeatGeek that have you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Simply utilize my promo code that is WARDY10, WARDY10, for 10% off your next ticket purchase, because guys, whether it's NFL tickets, NHL tickets, NBA tickets, concerts, comedies, you name it, all things in the ticketing space, SeatGeek has you covered. WARDY10 for 10% off your next purchase. Link down below. Now let's go ahead and deviate away from Michael Caine and those gorgeous highlights we'll come back to in a little bit later in the show. Let's go ahead and talk about the following. Initially broken today that you guys can see from Francis Romero here on X, hearing the Dominican shortstop prospect Wandy Asigen has opted out of his contract with the New York Yankees and has agreed to sign with the New York Mets at $3.8 million. And this will all happen right around mid-January when the signing period officially begins, January 15th. If you guys have been following the platform, you know every mid-January we cover the top IFA signings the Mets have made, and in recent years, they've made some really, really exciting ones, especially when you bear in mind, obviously, the creme de la creme, which was the top shortstop prospect from this past year, and Elian Pena, that the Mets gave a whopping $5 million signing bonus to. They're not giving $5 million to Wandy, but it isn't that far off. He's accepting $3.8 million, while he had many other teams showing interest as suitors. So how did this come to be? How did the Mets manage to pry away, again, one of the top prospects in all Major League Baseball for the upcoming class? Internationally, when looking at guys from DR, PR, Venezuela, you name it, all these players, a lot of excitement with them. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty, but if he rates universally through MLB, that we'll break down in a second in all baseball in this upcoming class, is a big deal. And as you guys can see, again, here's Wandy. We're going to show you guys all of his highlights, what you need to know about him here in just a second. But the fact that he decommitted from the Yankees and took a pay cut, for context, he was supposed to sign with the Yankees on a contract of a $4.3 million signing bonus, which would be one of the bigger ones the Yankees have done in this IFA period over the years. For the Mets, that wouldn't be the biggest, but it would be up there with some of their bigger ones in recent years, as they've been throwing a lot of money in the IFA pool, and it's been really exciting because a lot of top talents can come from this. Most notably, when I think of guys who the Mets have signed over the years in this category that have had levels of success, Francisco Alvarez first comes to mind, back when he was a 16-year-old catcher from Venezuela. The Mets at the time gave a record-breaking contract to on the bonus in their organization's history. That since has changed as they've won up that since then. We have seen it to a degree with Ronnie Mauricio. We've seen it with guys who haven't really panned out too much, with guys like Simone Juan, and now we've seen it to a higher degree there in Elian Pena from a year ago. But why did this youngster go from a $4.3 million bonus to $3.8 to land with the New York Mets? And here's where the key context reveals itself, everybody. Now, mind you, Juan Soto having him on the Mets side certainly doesn't hurt whatsoever, but this is also key context that cannot be understated. The Yankees officially parted ways with their 15-year veteran, one of their heads, if not their head, of international scouting, and Donnie Rowland that we saw entering this offseason. And in doing so, Donnie apparently was a key factor behind why we were going to see one Wandy sign with the Yankees. Now that Donnie has left the Yankees organization, so has Wandy in his commitment to land with those said Yankees. So because of this, for one reason or another, I'm sure other factors go in, like the Soto effect among others, he's taken a pay cut of $500,000 as a 16-year-old on a bonus to land with the New York Mets. So talk about commitment. That is what you love to see. So as you guys can see now a bit more beside me, who exactly is Wandy Asigen that the Mets are bringing in? And again, he's one of the most coveted players in his entire class. As a nice little breakdown here from MLB, they state the following. The excitement around Asigen's prospect profile stems primarily from his special left-handed swing. He has ripped off 110-mile-per-hour exit velocities already, and mind you, he's 16 years of age, as repeatedly able to find the barrel during in-game action. Asigen has a knack for, and I apologize if I'm butchering his last name wrong too. If you guys can correct me in the comments down below. Again, the first of many times I'll be talking about him in his career, I'm sure. Has a knack for creating loft from his frame, something that should allow him to continue to tap into his above-average power as he continues to fill out. So a big power hitter from the left side is what we're seeing that plays short. And the beauty about short, and this is me talking, please do not buy into, oh my God, the Mets have Lindor locked down. Who cares if they have the shortstop? Because one, by the time they might get to the bigs, Lindor's time as Mets shortstop may be coming to an end with him being really at his best. And secondly, the biggest appeal with landing top prospects that are shortstops is that they're the easiest to transition to other positions in the infield especially. So for context, if you have a guy like Asigen and a guy like Elian Pena, and they both look really good in their shortstop development, but you'd really prefer to shift one to, say, third or second base, that should be a smooth transition because it's less taxing on the player more than likely in comparison to, or contrast to, if you have a first base or a third base prospect, for example, and then you try to have them be a shortstop. Easier said than done, to say the least. But when they're already starting developing as a shortstop, again, shortstop and center field are universally believed as the most difficult positions to play as an infielder or outfielder. So this will only bode well for him as development, regardless as if he stays in that position. Let's see, the quickness of his hands has evaluators excited about the future potential impact he can have with the bat. Defensively, many of those same actions work in his favor. While his arm is merely average at this stage, mind he's only 16, he performs many of the quick twitch movements that evaluators look for when projecting a young player's ability to stick at shortstop. Asigen has a nose for the ball, and his wheels, which have been clocked at 6.5 seconds on 60-yard dash times, allow him to cover tons of ground laterally. Furthermore, just to give you guys more of a breakdown as to where he ranks against second in all of Major League Baseball that we see out of currently MLB's rankings, and here's more highlights separate from those that you guys can check out. He is currently at 6 foot, 180 pounds, which is crazy. He's a 16-year-old, batting from the left side, and his tools are as follows. His grade currently is at 65 on the hit, power it's at 60, run is at 60, arm value is at 50, fielding is at 55, and overall this is out of 65. This is at 65. So very, very exciting stuff from what we're seeing. Obviously, he has more adjusting and developing to do, especially on how he handles fastballs and off-speed breaking pitches on the outside corner, but that's something that he can hopefully continue to develop and blossom as he continues his young development as a player. But this is very exciting news, Mets fans, because just when you said to yourself, the Mets farm is in great position to have success for blockbuster trades, well, now the Mets have positioned themselves, not that they need to do this, I'd like to clarify this, but they have now positioned themselves where if the Mets wanted to trade at Elian Pena at all in the next calendar year in a truly blockbuster deal, there would be a greater palette to do so now, knowing that Pena is not the lone star of a shortstop prospect that they have in the organization. He is now just one of multiple. And again, I'm not saying the Mets should by any stretch trade Pena. I'm just saying they have more creativity and flexibility with their farm than they've ever had. And that's a really, really exciting thing if you ask me. So as you guys can see more here, and that's Munetaka. We'll go back to him later on in this one to just expand a little bit more here on what you guys should know about the Mets infield makeup. It's as follows, just rattling off names that have stood out to varying degrees that are going to be exciting moving forward. You have Wandy and you have Elliott, as I mentioned. You also have Mitch Voigt, who the Mets drafted just out of the first round last year from Michigan, who's very exciting, a fantastic defensive web gen of a player who actually had more of that bat-first mentality when he was in college. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues to transition to the professional level. AJ Ewing, who dominated this past year in the farm for the Mets, absolute speed demon, felt like he stole north of 100 bags. And that's really not too much of an exaggeration. I believe he had 70 plus this past year in the minor leagues. Fantastic hit tools, similar hit tools to a degree and profile of Jet Williams, which is very exciting on how he profiles as a player. Jet Williams, Jacob Reimer, who blossomed in the Mets farm this past year, as well as someone who has a lot of really good hit tools that developed in the Mets hitting lab in the farm. You look at Boston Burrow, who had an up-down past year, but there's still levels of excitement with him. Marco Vargas, Trey Snyder, Colin Houck, who's slowly but surely developing 2023 first-round pick for Billy Epler. Mets had a dominant 2023 draft, like literally one of the best we've seen in years. That was thanks to Epler. And the crazy thing is that we're looking at that draft class. Colin Houck currently looks like one of the worst picks when he was our first pick of the draft. So that just shows you how great of a job they did with their depth that year. We also look at guys like Jonathan Henriquez, who's also in the mix, Antonio Jimenez, and the list goes on. So the Mets are in very good standing with their very exciting infield prospects. But right away, you're going to have someone like Asigen come in and be universally one of their most coveted infield prospects right away, because that is how coveted he's been in Major League Baseball and how much he will continue to be in the Mets farm. So fantastic job by everyone involved in the Mets scouting department this year, getting the job done, pouncing once there was uncertainty begun. I don't know exactly when that began on Wandy's front, but universally from everything I'm seeing on social media from people that are tapped in to the Yankees officials and their farm is saying how not only disappointed they are, but truly how taken back they are by this actually coming to fruition. And again, whether it was the clear X factor or a X factor, parting ways with their 15-year veteran of their international scout there and their director of scouting, I should say, in Donnie, who we just talked about, did not bode well on the likelihood of someone like Wandy staying committed in the Yankees organization. So the Yanks, who have continued to swing and miss a lot in the IFA pool over the years, continue to do exactly that, as they're still hopeful to land some of the top names in the class as we get set for January 15th, just a couple weeks away from the time of us talking right now. So Mets fans, let me know all your thoughts on Wandy, your excitement level, and ultimately, how confident are you now in the Mets farm? As we know they have an abundance of assets and riches there on the pitching front, but now you mean to tell me that they're really bolstering things on the infield front with guys that are getting massive bonuses? That's an exciting time, because these are the kind of players that, God willing, we should hopefully see transition to the major league level as soon as anywhere from the age of 19 to 21. That is where we see how coveted guys like Wandy and Elliott are in particular. Not that to lock that they'll make the league by those ages, but there's been a lot of talk, especially with Elliott in particular, how he may very well have a Juan Soto-esque rise and someone that will not need a huge adjustment period to get to the major leagues. So whether it's by the time he's 19, 20 years of age, should that hold true of Wandy, that is still tremendous success when you bear in mind the average age of players in Major League Baseball and how long it takes a lot of kids to develop and get to the bigs. If we see Wandy and or Elliott get to the bigs by latest age 20 potentially, or 21, that is absolutely fantastic work by this organization's player development, should they obviously not trade any of these guys in the coming years. But guys, let me know your thoughts down below on all that. I greatly appreciate that. I have a blast working with them for Mets coverage and MLB-wide coverage every year. We'll be doing a lot more stuff with them as we get into the new year and beyond, getting closer to spring training. The Mets are among at least 7 teams that have been most aggressive in targeting mid-tier starters, starting pitchers per Jeff Passan. Now, let me clarify something, okay? There's a big question mark as to what mid-tier starter falls in. Because in my opinion, you can make the argument that Michael Cain is in this limbo of mid-tier to ace caliber. He has ace caliber upside, but he doesn't have the track record to state that he's in that category. But he also falls in the category of, again, being a mid-tier type starter. Again, a guy, what's a mid-tier? In my opinion, a mid-tier is a starter that falls more in the mid to back end of your rotation, because that's what Cain would currently be doing, with upside to be as good as a 1 or a 2 for you. But how he performs will be indicative as to really how far the upside goes. Now, there are an abundance of starters currently available in the market that I think you could classify as quote-unquote mid-tier in the free agent market. and that currently consists of starters like Walker Buehler, Patrick Corbin, Michael Lorenzen, Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, all guys that we do not want to see in Queens. Those are more guys on the back end that would not upgrade this rotation at all. Then you have guys that bring levels of success of an upgrade, and Tyler Mahle, Zach Little, who the Mets have been connected to over the years from the Rays organization, or Littell, Nick Martinez, who's been utilized as a starter and reliever. Wouldn't shock me if the Mets went down a guy like him for innings eaters as basically a Griffin Canning replacement if they don't bring Griffin Canning back. Otherwise, I don't really see the appeal. Lucas Giolito, who had a very good year on the baseline ERA, but his expected numbers were trash for the Red Sox. Giolito has not been the same starter since the sticky substance breakdown 3+ years ago in baseball, and I really don't have much of an appetite for him personally. But there's one that sticks out like a sore thumb. One, because A, he's still going to be able to provide the innings more than likely, and B, he has had a level of success in Queens. And yes, that's literally the guy that you see beside me, and Chris Bassitt. Now, I'll make it abundantly clear. I don't love the idea of landing Chris Bassitt. I'm not saying that the Mets need to land Chris Bassitt. I'm just saying if we're going to go with the free agent options out there that fall more in mid-tier category, he falls in that category. I think Zach Gallen is probably a step ahead. I think you can maybe argue that Michael Cain is a little bit of a step ahead. He just doesn't have the track record. So if we're going to go with these options, and mind you, doesn't mean that the Mets can't land a mid-tier starter in the trade market. That's something that's not being talked about nearly enough right now. I understand free agency is a huge topic and talking point, but it doesn't change the fact that there's an abundance of starters that may be available via trade that are more the mid-tier category, where they're not necessarily an ace, but a guy that, again, can come in to be your 3 or your 4 in your rotation. But let's just go ahead with the free agent options for now for the sake of this video not being 2 hours long. And let's go ahead and break down a little bit on Chris Bassitt, because we know that Bassitt rolled over and died just like Max Scherzer against the San Diego Padres and the wild card in 2022. So I'm not trying to pitch you on Bassitt's tremendous playoff success, even though we did see him be a fixture and a focal point in the Blue Jays' success in their World Series run this past year. Bassitt, who is now entering... kind of nuts. He's only entering his age 37 season. Feels like Bassitt's 40 already. He's been old forever, it feels like. But with the Mets in 2022 and 181 innings, he had an 8+ K per nine to 2.4 walks per nine, a 3.4 ERA and a 3.4 expected ERA. A very good year for Bassitt. His one and done year. At the time, the Mets traded Adam Aller for him, who has not amounted to anything of significance for the Mets fans to lose sleep over. As we see, Aller was initially a Rule 5 draft pick for the Mets years ago, blossomed the farm in 2021, getting into 2022, and that's what led him to being traded that ensuing offseason as part of the Bassitt deal. And if I'm not mistaken, it was Aller, right? If it wasn't Aller, then I know we traded Cade Morris to the Athletics, but I think that was part of the Paul Blackburn trade, but don't quote me on it, everybody. Let me know what I'm right and wrong on in the comments down below. Bassitt began his multi-year contract with the Blue Jays in 2023, pitched 200 innings for the workhorse at the age of 34. Really good, same exact K-to-walk ratio. Home run rate was a little up, but he's more of a batter's box half the year. 3.6 ERA and a 4 expected ERA. Bassitt, 2024, 171 innings, almost a 9K per 9, but the walks jump 1 full walk per 9 to 3.6 or so. Home run rate goes back down a little bit, but a 4.1 ERA with a 4.5 expected ERA. Not the best year for Bassitt. Then 2025 rolls around for Bassitt. 170 innings, not including playoffs, 8.7 K per 9, 2.7 walks per 9, back to a home run rate over 1 per 9, a 3.96 ERA, and a 4.2 expected ERA. What is the common theme with Chris Bassitt over each of the past 4+ seasons? It's that he's giving you at least 170 innings. And that's what the Mets need. So if the Mets said, you know what, Chris, let's sign you on a 1-year contract with a 2nd-year option. We know that you have handled New York and can handle it well. We know that we shouldn't rely on you as a guy that we need to step up come playoff time. Would you be interested in returning the Mets here on a contract and something that I think will be better of AAV than other clubs, because that's what you have to do with your Stearns. Otherwise, why would Bassitt want to at all return to New York? I think that there's enough to justify going after Chris Bassitt if you want him as more of that mid to back end option for you. But again, just as I said with Michael Cain, you cannot land someone like Chris Bassitt without doing something of greater significance for this rotation. So let's say hypothetically, and I'm not saying the Mets need to or are going to go down this route, so just let me clarify that. I'm just saying as a hypothetical. And the Mets went down a route where the rotation beginning next season looked along the lines of Noel McLean, Freddie Peralta, Tarek Skubal, Joe Ryan, just someone in the category of an ace caliber upside starter that they acquire via trade. You can plug in whatever name you want to plug in there. McLean and that other individual are 1 and 2. Then you get to 3. And then you get to 3, and your 3 at that time is going to be Clay Holmes. Then you get to your 4. And your 4 is one of David Pierce or Kodai Senga, whoever that they decide not to trade. Then you get to your 5. It's Chris Bassett. Then you get to your 6, and then that is where you have the floodgates open a bit more because you have Sean Manaea looking to have a bounce-back season, and you could argue you want Manaea in front of Bassett, but I don't really think one is crazy better than the other right now in a profile. They are former teammates from Oakland too, so maybe that could all be a selling point in negotiations for him. And then you have Brandon Sproat and Jonathan on the outside looking in. That is not bad pitching depth at all, and that's something I'm in favor of if the Mets went down that route. But what I'm not in favor of is if you, instead of landing and acquiring that ace caliber starter or signing for Valdez, your rotation next season starts with Noah McLean, Clay Holmes, Michael Cain, Sean Manaea, and then you go on from there. Because, again, you're lacking the certainty of ace caliber upside starters. You need guys with more certainty than that. And it's even worse if you say landed Bassett and then you say third back Griffin Canny in the mix and you didn't land someone of greater significance than that. That is where the Mets cannot fall in the category of. If they do, I, like every other Mets fan, will be pitchfork and fire in those hands to go after David Stearns and what they're doing wrong with building this rotation heading in next season. I understand wanting wiggle room for your youth, but I also understand the Mets are still in a win-now stage, and you need to allow those pitchers to prove themselves and to actually jump in because they pitched so well. Like last year, they were rushed to a degree because the Mets were so incompetent with their rotation. The Mets had at all a level of competence with their rotation. They would not have rushed up McLean, Ton, and Sproat to the degrees that they did, but they did it out of desperate need because they waited too long, they sat on their hands, and before they knew it, they had no other starting options to consider, and that was a route to go down. When McLean it worked, with Sproat it worked to a degree, and with Ton, it didn't work all that well, but again, a big adjustment period for him. He's the youngest of the group, so that's why I'm not worried. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Out of the Mets supposedly being among the most aggressive in this mid-tier market, which starter out of the one that I relayed to you guys, separate from Chris Bassett, are you most attracted to, if at all? Or are you having your foot down and saying, I don't want anyone from that pack in general. You got to shoot for an absolute lowest bar, Michael Cain, and upward. I find myself in the category. I'm curious where you guys find yourselves on this topic in particular. But now to go on from talking about Chris Bassett, Seabass, the Bulldog, we'll get into more on him if we have to this offseason, but for now, we'll leave it at that. Let's also go ahead and talk about an abundance of other topics here in Metsland. And let's begin here by getting on to a little bit more regarding Tatsuya Imai, because this came out that the Yankees are unlikely to land Tatsuya Imai, but that fans should stay tuned. So this quote is not entirely accurate. I do need to correct it, but I'm just using this for the sake of what the topic is on the front of Tatsuya Imai, okay? So this is the exact quote from Jack Curry that we saw today, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. This is from Yes Network for the Yankees, and I quote, "I'm not sure there's a connection there." And then he followed it saying, "Stay tuned." And it was extremely vague. And Curry has been one to really gas up when the Yankees have been in the market for players over the years. So to see him kind of throw cold water on this is telling that we should be surprised at this rate of Tatsuya Imai signs with the New York Yankees, which I'm certainly not complaining about as a Mets fan who would love to see Imai not only with the Bronx, but land in Flushing, Queens instead. And if there's anything positive to say on the Imai front, while I will be surprised if the Mets gave him a long-term deal, as there's an expectation Imai will get a contract in the 5 to 7+ year window. It's hard to envision the Mets going there, even though Imai has more of the qualities and attributes you're looking for. Only turning 28, just starting peak prime of his career, sub-2 ERA this past year, touch 100 on his fastball, look dominant in doing so, sub 10 K per nine to 2.5 walks per nine, a tremendous home run rate. There's a transition period with the MPB. Yes, we know this, but we also know that Imai, as of over the past couple of days, has begun the process now where he is actively meeting with teams, and he'll be meeting with teams at their facilities to check them out, as Imai will have to sign with a club by the time we get to early January, because that is when his posting window will be done. Not as soon as Munetaka Murakami, who only has, if I'm not mistaken, around 4 calendar days left to sign, because he needs to sign by December 22nd. So there's a lot more to say on the Murakami front, to a degree than there even is with someone like Tatsuya Imai. But Imai, who is a very attractive piece for the New York Mets, one does have to wonder, the Mets' lack of connection to Imai might not be a bad thing. Again, I'm not saying this for you guys to get your hopes up. Anything can happen in regards to the Tatsuya Imai pursuit. We know the Phillies really like Imai and have been involved in this market. We know the Chicago Cubs have been really involved. And we know that Imai has, stated he doesn't want to go to the Dodgers, wants to beat them as a matter of fact, and B, he doesn't want to land with a team that already has Japanese talent, which means if the Mets land Imai, there's a greater likelihood than ever that they would trade someone like Kodai Senga. So, why would Tatsuya Imai come to the New York Mets? I think there's a couple things to take into consideration. One, the Mets' success with Japanese pitchers over the years, because even though Senga struggled to stay healthy, when he has been healthy and hasn't dealt with ailment, he's been awesome. And we've seen him show those flashes of success with the Mets. And the Mets really kind of moved the needle with that signing under Billy Epler to show that, hey, we do have a say and we do have levels of success in this MPB market. Not nearly as dominant as the Dodgers, but that's okay when Tatsuya Imai wants nothing to do with that same LA club. So Imai, I love the fact that the Mets have actually not really been connected to him much, because if he lands with the Cubs, if he lands with the Phillies, I'll worry about it then, especially if he lands with the Phillies. That'll really suck, because that'll be hard to justify for the Mets. How could you allow him to land with Philadelphia, even though the Phillies, you could argue, are the more attractive team from rotation depth of really being one of many horses there, as well as the Phillies still looking like that they're in greater standing of an organization from the MLB-ready product than the Mets, and that's just a fact. The Phillies were a better team than the Mets this past year, even though the playoff run didn't have much to be desired, and Phillies fans know that firsthand. But as long as hopefully he doesn't land with a rival like that, Imai to the Mets may have more steam than you initially think, because what is the common trend that we have seen this offseason? With the exception of the not Luke Weaver, with the exception of the Devin Williams signing, every single move that David Stearns has done this offseason has come rather quietly. It has come basically out of nowhere, okay? When looking at not only both Alonso and Diaz leaving, when they left specifically, some of it we understood to a degree, others still took us aback. Then we look at Brandon Nimmo, trade came out of nowhere for Marcus Semien. We also look at all the other moves the Mets have made, and the theme, the trend has been not a lot of reporting has happened prior. So if there's anything to be cautiously optimistic about if you're a Mets fan that wants to see Tatsuya Imai land in Queens, it's the fact that there really hasn't been much reported connection since the start of the offseason. I love Imai. I think he'd be awesome. He's a guy that, again, mid-rotation starter with ace caliber upside. But he brings so much upside out of this entire class, I think you could justify really going out of your way to try to sign someone like him. And yes, Imai's a guy that I think you do go the lengths of giving him a 7-year contract, because that's likely what it will take to have to try to sway him to go to the Mets instead of going to other contending teams. Because as I stated, the Mets don't have a lot that they can sell currently. So you have to flex your financial muscle. You have to flex the adamancy of how bright your future is with your farm, and how you're going to continue to build around Soto, Lindor, and co. into what will hopefully be a very good product as soon as 2026. And kind of, see where the chips fall, wherever they may. So Mets fans, let me know your thoughts on Tatsuya Imai, as the Yankees do not appear likely to land him as of now, barring changes. And that could continue to open the door for a team like the New York Mets, as Imai is getting closer to deciding where he's going to sign. Now, beyond Tatsuya Imai, everybody, we have more topics to get into in this one. And we have topics on the front of specifically Munetaka Murakami, Kazuma Okamoto. And I'd like to touch on these specific topics in particular, as you guys can see here. Shout out to, Yaku Cosmopolitan on X. Easily the best account you guys can find on X when breaking down these MPP talents and kind of what they may profile as. And in reply to Daniel Wexler, who is a very good follow on X as well, probably tweets about the Mets more than anyone else on the planet. I mean, he lives and breathes X. It's actually insane. From dusk till dawn, he's always posting stuff. But he did ask opinion from Yaku here on X, his thoughts as to what the floor versus the ceiling is for Munetaka Murakami, because there's been a lot of contradicting reports coming out, and I've fallen, unfortunately, victim to this as well, initially thinking that Munetaka Murakami was horrendous against any type of fastball beyond 93 miles per hour, but that's factually incorrect, actually. He actually has handled velocity very well, as a matter of fact, and where he's had struggles have been in very, very limited sample sizes. So when you look at actually the side-by-side of Murakami's success level against velocity at the same age Ohtani was at, they're literally identical. So that's why the jury's still out as to why Murakami might be one of the sneakiest pickups for a team this offseason, because his market has fallen to a degree, and a team may be able to land him on a smaller structured contract than what we initially thought. Reporting has come out from Will Sammon of The Athletic over the past day that Murakami may have to settle with a short-term contract. To be determined if that'll actually hold true, but as Yaku also breaks down, he says the ceiling for someone like Munetaka Murakami is a Rafael Devers, Matt Olson, or a Kurtz-esque superstar capable of a 900-plus OPS and 50-plus home runs. I mean, that potential alone is why teams are going to really be trying hard to land him, and I hope the Mets fall themselves in that category category more than where I've previously stated they shouldn't be. I like Kazuma Okamoto more as a team profile and fit, and I've stood by that, but Murakami definitely has a higher ceiling between the two, just entering his age 26 season. A true DH profile, not a guy you want the hot corner much at first base, but as someone who, again, maybe you could have platoon a bit more time with Jorge Polanco if he gets his defense better. I just think it's a defensive disaster class if that's the route the Mets go down. Murakami, I'd love for it to happen, but I feel like the Jorge Polanco signing has all but solidified the likelihood that Murakami will not land with a team like the Mets. Having said that, however, though, knowing that his floor is someone more in the Joey Gallo range is interesting because, again, he very well could fall in this swing and miss category where he just does not develop well. Like here, again, the worst that we're looking at are guys like Sawinski and Morel, worst. Too much swing and miss for power to play, below average overall with occasional hot streaks. The 50th percentile league average would be guys like, again, Joey Gallo, Alvarez, and Mr. Davis, going back to that horrendous contract, the Orioles. Very dangerous but volatile, low average, and we're looking at, clearly being a merchant, being obviously a doubles home run machine. Power translates, but at the cost of leading the league in strikeouts. So that very well could be the case for Murakami, who has an absurd strikeout rate as we head into next season. And then you have Max Muncy, Rafael Devers, Medelson types. That's like best scenario. If everything goes well with Murakami, he could easily become like a Kyle Schwarber profile as one of the best true lefty power-hitting DH profiles in Major League Baseball. And God willing, for Murakami's case, that is where he falls in the category of. Let's also not forget David Stearns scouted him in person August of this year. I believe it was August 12th, actually, that he was in attendance for Murakami's game in the MPB in Japan and watched him hit a walk-off bomb in real time, live in person. So Stearns has seen firsthand, front and center, exactly how important of a talent Murakami is in this free agent class. Yes, the floor is lower than Okamoto, who I have a lot of great things to say about, but the ceiling is greater than anyone else that we're talking about coming out of Japan this offseason. And that swing really can transition to the major league level. You're going to see that sweet swing dominate in the league for years to come. So Murakami, I don't necessarily love. I love the upside with him. And that upside alone is why I would not be opposed to the New York Mets if they find themselves landing Munetaka in the end. However, like I said, now that you signed Jorge Polanco, that's going to get reps at DH, may be bounced around the infield for times that you need it from every now and then, and some reps at first. It just feels like if the Mets were going to land a Munetaka Murakami, that they were not going to land someone like Jorge Polanco at $20 million a year for 2 years. Otherwise, I'll have to see it to believe it. Kazuma Okamoto is a guy that I really, really like as well, that I've told you about plenty. I'll just be very brief on him. Okamoto is the most polished MPB talent coming out of Japan for position players. He's been the captain for the Yomiuri Giants for the past decade, has a David Wright-esque swing, which is very appealing about him, and has been basically a version of a Gold Glove 6 consecutive times or so in the MPB. Maybe not consecutive, but a lot of the times at the hot corner, can play above league average defense at first base, can also handle the left field without a problem. He's very versatile. He's probably the second most versatile player in this free agent class after Cody Bellinger, which is kind of crazy to say. But Okamoto, who sits right around 30 bombs, north of 90 RBIs every single year, hitting for great high contact. He had a limited sample size this past year before he was posted, obviously, but was dominant in doing so. As the first position player in Yomiuri Giants team history in Japan to actually be posted from the MPB. So Okamoto, who served a decade or so as the captain for the Yomiuri Giants, now is looking to take his talents to the major league level. We'll see if Okamoto will not only lie with the Mets, but with a team that's going to be able to get versatile with him, who I think will have a more polished and immediate impact of a bat than what Munetaka Murakami will give you with whatever team he signs with at the MPB level. But let me know, guys, your thoughts on Murakami, Okamoto, and all that fun stuff, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. Because before we get out of here, I do just have a couple other kind of miscellaneous Mets topics I would like to touch on just briefly because they're regarding the Mets, and we might as well have the conversations about them while we're here. So going on from that, everybody, let's also shout out Noah McLean. As you guys can see, he was talking with MLB Network today on really just saying how pumped up he was and saying, and I quote, "Once I got the call, it was a no-brainer for me. I've always loved watching those guys go out and compete for their country." So Mets fans, either cover your ears, cover your eyes, or get filled with excitement. The World Baseball Classic is happening next March, and Noah McLean will be a key fixture in it in what will be a star-studded Team USA rotation. Already looking like the best rotation out of any team that will be available for the World Baseball Classic. I mean, Team USA is currently positioning themselves to actually give Japan a run for their money greater than losing to gold to them in 2023, as they had Murakami, of course, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Roki Sasaki, Shohei Ohtani, Lars Nootbaar, funny enough, among others. But yeah, they're really building the roster right now. Just to show you guys the latest commitments as of today for Team USA: Tarek Skubal, hopefully soon to be New York Met; Paul Skeens, Joe Ryan, Noel McLean, Mason Miller. Hopefully some of those guys are Mets as we get into next season. I would love any of them. Literally any of them. And I know Skeens won't be traded, but the others might. I also know that Clay Holmes has committed to Team USA as well. So Holmes and McLean will be going right out there and trying to dominate for Team USA. We'll be doing a lot of fun coverage for the WBC as we get to that time around spring. But again, after seeing Diaz blow his knee out, thankfully he's not a Met, so we don't have to worry about it in that sense at least. He'll probably be repping Team Puerto Rico, and I'm sure dominate without an issue, because God forbid that things don't work out for the Dodgers for once. I anticipate Team USA to look really, really good, and I understand fans are concerned about the injury that happened to Diaz a couple years ago. I don't fault you. From that point on, I haven't wanted any New York Met involved in the WBC for that reason, but it doesn't matter how we feel. It's going to happen regardless. Soto's going to be playing in left field for Team Dominican Republic, so like Lindor's going to be captain for Puerto Rico again. These things are inevitably going to happen. Alonso will be playing for Team USA for Baltimore, which will kind of be crazy. Should he be playing for them? I don't know in confidence if he is yet. But this is going to be really, really interesting to see how it all plays out. A lot of Mets are committed. And the main thing that concerns me with injury risk, with starters in particular, with guys like McLean and Holmes, is more so the fact that they're basically going to be going from 0 to 100 and throwing in highly competitive, highly intense games, trying to give their team quality innings. And that is something that if you're doing that early in the season before really spring training's in full swing, there's always greater cause for concern and risk of injury. So I hope and pray to God nothing happens there. But if it does happen, you know what to blame. It's the WBC. Now, also another miscellaneous topic to touch on briefly. There was an interesting report that came out of the Texas Rangers camp today that I'd like to share regarding maybe some clubhouse differences that we saw for Corey Seager and Marcus Semien, two of the key fixtures and leaders in that org leading to their 2023 World Series championship. John Heyman stated the following on Bleacher Report Live, which I also do for BR, so shout out to Heyman for doing a great job there. He said the Rangers ultimately traded Semien to the Mets in part because the organization wanted to break up the pairing over what he described as a clubhouse thing, adding that there was a little bit of conflict there. Now, I'd like to preface, this had far more to do with the Rangers wanting Brandon Nimmo, Semien being a contract that made sense to swap, and Semien coming off of some seasons that weren't the best productively, and he's not getting any younger. That was the key focal point behind Marcus Semien getting traded instead of just clubhouse, where we have heard rumblings that, Lindor wasn't even made captain for the Mets this past year because Brandon Nimmo was one of the guys that would have kind of felt slighted by that. So interesting that there's, to a degree, the clubhouse differences or, difference in minds that have led to these guys being departed and essentially traded in Nimmo for Semien here. Semien and Seager have long been known to have different philosophies when it comes to game prep. That dynamic was previously referenced by former Ranger Kevin Pillar and former New York Mets him on foul territory upon his retirement in July. The Rangers clubhouse had a lot of individual stuff going on and a lot of guys who were doing their own thing. Additional signs of clubhouse chemistry issues were noted by DLLS Rangers reporter Jeff Wilson, who said that during the 2025 season, Semien made multiple attempts to organize team get-togethers, but only a handful of players attended. So kind of pulling what we saw the reporting of with Chris Paul, who's done with the Clippers, was supposedly trying to do like team parties and all this stuff, but no one was showing up. So Semien, again, the captain of the Rangers, trying to be the team leader, trying to lead, but unfortunately didn't lead as much by example as maybe he was initially hoping. For right or wrong reason, jury's still out. Wilson also added that the team really spent time together off the field and that many players' wives frequently travel with the club, an arrangement he described as atypical. A Rangers Nation source familiar with the situation claims tensions escalated in late 2025, which makes sense because the Rangers, of course, did not have a good year. And success trumps all. I promise you, if the Rangers had valiant playoff runs since the World Series championship 2 years ago, this would not even be a discussion piece right now. But all in all, some differences in philosophy and how they carry themselves. But all I have to say is I really hope Marcus Semien fills in the shoes of Brandon Nimmo, because Nimmo was the guy for the Mets that was doing a lot of the team get-togethers. Separate from Lindor, Nimmo was the guy in spring training that would always get together their golf trip that they would do with all the players and their families in Port St. Lucie. Like, Nimmo is the guy that has been a fixture in so much, including the Team Santa that he's no longer a part of. Now it's the youngsters I'll show you guys in a second that took part in it, while Clay Holmes was the official Santa for the Mets holiday party that they did at Citi Field today, if I'm not mistaken. But you need guys that can really fill in those shoes that go beyond the on-field product. So hopefully Semien, who again looks like he's a really good team leader, trying to lead, trying to invite guys to take part in activities off the field, I'd anticipate that he will hopefully smoothly be a transition from Nimmo to him and kind of handling those things moving forward. But to be determined, obviously, like anything else. But that was some interesting detail on the front of the Rangers and the differences between Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. Beyond that, however, though, everybody, we did see briefly, the Cardinals are still interested in a rotation addition. I told you guys, going back over the past couple weeks, I'll be surprised if David Pearson or Kodai Senga is not traded into the NL Central. I have a feeling that one of them is going to be traded in the NL Central for a need type thing, and the Mets will be happy about what they're getting in return. So we'll see if that suitor becomes the Cardinals in the end. Here's Jonathan looking like the kiddo as he is. Brandon Sproul, Nolan McLean are serving as Santa's elves for Clay Holmes today at the Mets holiday party. I love to see that. I love the youngsters. Hopefully the three-headed monster for this Mets rotation next year, should they not be traded, all thrive. Excited to see them. Also, I thought was notable was remarks from Brandon Sproat did state the following, that Brandon Sproat said how, he's in constant contact daily with McLean and Hahn off the field. So they're a really tight-knit group. All the more reason why you cannot trade away that group unless A, you acquire truly an ace caliber starter like a Skubal among others, B, you go after a Mason Miller and actually land him, or C, bring in a guy that's so elite like, again, a Fernando Tatis Jr., someone along those lines. Anything else, kick rocks. As you guys can see, the Team USA WBC team is looking nasty. Skubal, Skeens, McLean, Ryan, Holmes, Miller, Boyd, Clevenger, Whitlock, Jax. That is a star-studded pitching staff from the rotation to some of their bullpen ads that they've done to this point. And one final thing before I get out of here that I did want to mention with you guys was from this piece from Jeff Passan did also state that the Mets are absolutely in the market for the top pitchers still if they're going to drop in their years, meaning the Mets would love a Framber Valdez, but they don't want him long-term, which is not anything new. We have known about this for a little bit now. And here's also the piece, everybody, regarding Munetaka Murakami from Will Salmon. And the final thing that I'll share with you guys before we get out of here is a little Luke Weaver telling you how much he loves Juan Soto. And this was prior to Soto signing with the New York Mets. Now that relationship can be rekindled as teammates yet again. Listen up, everybody. Oh, maybe not. It literally just glitched on me. Shout out to X for glitching. It tends to do this randomly at times. I apologize for that, everybody. I'll try to get you this clip here in just a second, though, so bear with me as I go ahead and do exactly that. In the meantime, I might as well relay the other thing that I did want to mention, which is the fact that, again, the Mets have brought back Kevin Herget on that one-year minor league contract, of course, that we saw with a spring training invite. Herget logged 12 innings for the Mets this past season, allowed just 4 runs. Again, veteran right-hander, New Jersey native, grew up a diehard David Wright fan. Happy to have him back in the mix as a spring training invite, and then you go on from there. I also did want to mention the following, if this will not glitch on me, so to be determined, everybody. It just did it again. Oh, this is so annoying. Hold on, folks. Let me see if I can try to figure this out. It's okay. If we can't find the clip, I'll play it for you guys tomorrow. It's not the end of the world. Instead, what I'll do before we get out of here, I'll show you guys the following. The latest roster moves the New York Mets made as of yesterday was acquiring Drew Romo off waivers from the Baltimore Orioles. He's a 24-year-old catching prospect. Was a top draft pick just a couple years ago, so a lot of potential there. Shout out to the Romo family. I saw his mom follow me on X and himself liked my post on congratulating him. So congratulations on joining the org, Romo. We'll see what you can provide. Hasn't really done much in the minor leagues to be excited about. A former top draft pick from the Rockies organization. And we'll see if he amounts to anything. Again, only 24 years of age, so plenty of potential for him. Someone at minimum will just be in the minors, continuing his development as a young catcher with limited upside. But as a corresponding move, the Mets did in fact DFA Brandon Waddell, which is kind of a bummer. I hope Waddell stays in the organization and clears waivers because Waddell is an innings eater, has ate some quality innings for the Mets last year as a swingman type of a southpaw, and he's not bad at all. So I hope that he doesn't in fact go anywhere, but if he does, I'm wishing him the best with his future endeavors. But guys, that'll do it for our video. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button on your way in and on your way out. I'll see you all here next time breaking down all the latest in Mets land. This is your guy Wardy signing out. Let's go Mets. Peace out, folks.